Welcome beyond the Reiki Gateway. I'm your host, Andrea Kennedy. Like countless others, Reiki found me when I wasn't even looking, and then it ignited a whole new world of questions. This podcast explores topics of interest for the spiritually curious. Join me for discussions and special guests on subjects such as past lives, crystal healing, spiritual awakening, ascension, energy healing, and more, all to assist and inspire you along your unique soul's journey. This episode is sponsored by our BTRG insiders who receive special exclusive benefits each and every month. You can find out more later in this episode. Thank you, insiders. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome. I'm Andrea Kennedy, and today, beyond the Reiki Gateway, I am welcoming Jeralyn Glass. She's an internationally acclaimed Broadway and opera singer who has performed in premier opera houses and theaters around the world. After experiencing the profound loss of her son Dylan, her path led her to become a pioneer in the field of sound healing. She offers an alchemical blend of crystalline meditation, bioenergetics, and transformational sound that ignites music's power to heal. Her new book, Sacred Vibrations, is a must-have for anyone interested in the transformative power of sound. Welcome to the show, Jeralyn. I'm so excited to have you here and present you to our audience. And I want to get into it, but I have to say, I just recently saw you on the Kelly Clarkson show. And what a shock that was. I was like, oh my gosh, she's coming on the podcast. And here she is on the Kelly Clarkson show. How was that?
Music medicine going mainstream.
Yes.
It was wonderful. She's what an incredibly talented singer and what a wonderful human being. And yeah, it was a gift. It was wonderful to share with her about the power of sound and music and to share that across the nation. It was very, very exciting.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
It
Were
was
the,
just it played on November 15th.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I thought it was pretty recent. So, and you're so right, like mainstream, so many of these once woo-woo things are becoming more mainstream. So, have you been out there in other mainstream places too recently?
Yes, with Maria Shriver and her Sunday paper, which was also very, very thrilling because I know personally how important music can be for all of us because it's a language that everyone understands. So I was very excited to be in Maria Shriver's, a little article in Maria Shriver's Sunday paper and podcast with Dr. Drew and KTLA TV here in Los Angeles. And yeah, it's good. It's good to be able to share something that can be so helpful for so many people.
Well, in sound, everybody has that in common, you know, um, the vibrations of sound. And nobody's left out of that. Other modalities, whether it's Reiki or something like that. I mean, of course, there's energy everywhere, but, they may not go for a Reiki session, but we're hearing sound all the time. And we're even using sound and music every day to feel better or, to get our bodies moving or whatever it is. So we have this comfort level, I think, with sound already. So the threshold maybe for believing in the power of sound maybe is not so high because we do have a lot of experience with it. And we know, a song can take us across time, even. You hear a song and you remember when you're in high school or it brings back a memory. So there's so many different facets of sound, at least, that come to my mind as I get to sit here and talk to you. But, you had this background with music before you ever got into the bowls. I'm looking at you here and you have these beautiful bowls behind you. And oh my goodness, I couldn't even begin to understand why you have so many bowls. And we'll get into all of that. But can you share with us how music led you to what you do today with sound bowls and the special place music has had and sound has had, in all through your life?
Yeah, I knew as thank you for asking. I knew as a young child that music was going to be my path. It was very clear. I remember twirling around outside on our front porch and just feeling this very strong connection to God, to something bigger than me, that, and how good it felt, which we all really know how good it feels to move your body to music, to dance, to sing. Even if you're doing along with the radio or in the shower or whatever. I just had this very strong experience as a small child and knew that music was going to be my path. And I was blessed to sing a solo in the sixth grade choir concert. And people were like, to my parents, like, she's talented, what are you going to do? And my mom ended up taking me to a voice teacher who is to this day 102 years old. And she's amazing. Like, if you heard her sing today, you would not believe her age. And, she has partial dementia, but you put a song in front of her and you say, hey, for example, she sang the voice of Ava Gardner in the MGM musical Showboat. So she dubbed for Ava Gardner and she dubbed for all of Lucille Ball's movies. If you say to her, sing Can't Help Loving That Man, boom, she remembers every single word. So it's so interesting when you work, for example, with music and memory, which is what was so fascinating to Maria Shriver because that's her passion too. How people have that kind of information. It's stored in a very particular way in our bodies so that, as you said, you listen to a song and you remember, oh, being in high school, or you remember that first dance or the first kiss or whatever it is, or you remember being with your grandma or whatever it is. Music connects us. And I knew this very strongly. Like my teacher, when I started at 11, she started me with some traditional Italian studies, which are called Vakai. And they're just like little exercises based on certain principles. And so I started studying also in another language, learning it phonetically, and then eventually learning Italian, learning French, learning German. Um, but you recognize that music is the language of the human heart. Every human being, no matter how old we are. I just had an experience during my book tour of playing an event, and there was a mom with a baby, and she brought the baby up to greet me after the event. And so I took a singing bowl and I just tapped it, and the baby was just like, it was so cute. I mean, everybody was laughing because the baby responded to it. So it's like, it doesn't matter if you're a newborn or if, like my teacher, you're 102. Music is a language, universal, that every human heart understands. And I think that's the beauty of it, that it goes beyond our understanding. It goes beyond words, it goes beyond human touch. And I like to say it takes us in that place of the ineffable. So there are so many things in our lives that, you feel deep pain, or you feel grief, or you feel a memory of something in your, there's like an image or a vision. Like, music takes us beyond where words can take us. And in that place of the ineffable, it's just a feeling of the sublime. It's a feeling of something so beyond words. And I think that's the aspect that connects us to God. However, again, whoever we pray to, whatever we believe, there is something bigger than us. And whether you call it spirit, the universe, Jesus, Mary, Buddha, Mohammed, it doesn't really matter. It's that sense that music can quiet the thinking mind and connect us to the beyond, to something that is bigger than us. And I think that's part of the power of it, is that it has become more and more. We're working in this field now that's emerged called music as medicine, and it really has become a medicine that the medical fields are all acknowledging. I was able to present in Washington D.C. a year ago at a big conference where we had the leading scientists, doctors, medical researchers, and music therapists, and then artists, performers, and how wonderful it was for everybody to come together in DC with the National Institutes of Health and the Kennedy Center and Renee Fleming Foundation, National Endowment for the Arts, and to really have this collaboration. Like, wow, how can music help with dementia? Wow, how can it help with Parkinson's? How can it help in childbirth? How can it help youth? How can it help when you're in the hospital and you're going to have a surgery? How can it help with anxiety? How does music help veterans? How does it help hospice patients and their families, cancer patients? And this is real. Andrea, and this is what I get so passionate about because it truly is a language that every human being, wherever you are in the world and however old you are, understands.
It is just fascinating to me too, exactly what you're saying. Everybody is included in how they can be affected, in that potential. Um, I wanted to ask you, you got your start, as a young child with sound with your voice. And isn't that just brilliant? Because the voice, it's like our first instrument, of music is our voice. And so when you were in sixth grade, it was sixth grade, right? That you
Mhm.
were, yes. Were you, I want to ask you this, were you nervous in sixth grade for that? Or did you just know? How was that as a sixth grader?
11-year-old. Um, that's such a fun question because later, as I moved to New York and then I was on Broadway and I was studying with a very famous acting teacher, like he'd always say to all of us, those butterflies in your tummy, that's your talent. And it's going knock, knock, knock. I'm ready to play. Right. So it's there have been very few moments in my career, but there was one in particular, and don't ask me where it came from. I don't know. I was singing the Magic Flute in Germany and in German. It was a brand new production, and the character I played was Pamina, who is a princess, and her music is actually very challenging. Now I had practiced this. I knew the aria and I knew her music inside and out. But on the night of the premiere, I just had a feeling like it was an overwhelming feeling like I needed to go home. Like I did not want to go on the stage. And I think that was really the only time in my career. And it never happened again. But I think there was a feeling in that particular situation that are you good enough? Do
Mhm.
you deserve? Can you really stand up and present? And it's a most eloquent, elegant music, and it's very exposed. Her aria, and I think it was more about that. But like as an 11-year-old, it was like, okay, we're gonna go out, and we're gonna play. So I don't remember experiencing like, oh my gosh, but I think for everybody, there's always the feeling of am I going to be good enough? Will I make the grade? Will they like me? Will they applaud? All those things. And the more you get into being a singer or being a performer or being an artist, but it's with everything in our lives. A mom, was my meal tasty enough? A professional, did I do my job well enough? And I think that's something that my teacher used to say to me, take the question mark off your back. And I'm like, well, what's she talking about? But she knew just what you're talking about. So whether it's the butterflies in the tummy or whether there's just something lurking in our subconscious that just goes, yeah, do you really deserve to be here? Are you good enough? Do you make the grade? Will they like you, etc.? I think everybody struggles with that. But for me, the essence of music is so filled with joy, even if I'm singing a sad song. And like in the case of Pamina, it was a very sad, sad, sad aria that she sings. There is joy inherent in all of that. So I think for all of us to understand, a, we are unique vibrational instruments. Nobody, Andrea, has your voice and your timbre, and nobody has mine. And so this question of do I deserve and am I good enough? Am I lovable enough? Is not about that. It's really about, okay, let me ground in and center into who I am and trust that I'm unique in all of time. And if I don't express myself, that expression will never happen in any other way. There's a beautiful quote from Martha Graham, great choreographer, to Agnes DeMille, great choreographer. They revolutionized the field of dance that talks about exactly that. That it's not up to us to judge it, but it's up to us to identify what is this vibrational frequency. What is this channel that's flowing through each of us, and can we accept that, and can we allow that to be expressed, to be honored in the world. I think that's when I'm teaching, so I'm teaching voice, I'm a professor of voice, and I also teach over 120 hours of trainings in the field of sound and music medicine. And it's really about the first thing I have to do, Andrea, is I have to tune my own human instrument. And, because we can tune a piano, we can tune the guitar, we tune the violin or whatever. Um, but we're not really taught how do we tune ourselves when we get out of tune. So back to your question, like as an 11-year-old, I just think I was filled with excitement, and it was my school and my friends and family were there. And it was, I was actually singing something from Hans Christian Andersen that Danny Kaye made famous as a popular song. And I think there was just so much joy involved in it that at that age I didn't feel that. And I think that's what I really like to focus on teaching people is how do I ground and embody my essence? And then how do I have the courage and the confidence to freely express that, knowing that I am a unique vibrational instrument, that really nobody has my sound. We laugh sometimes when we hear a comedian mimicking a celebrity, right? And it's like, how did they get that? Because it's really right on. We laugh about that because on some level, I think we all really understand that we're unique in our ability to express with sound, with energy, with rhythm, with timbre. And this is something to be honored and cherished, and to learn how to trust that and express it. So, like when I had to do auditions, when I was auditioning for Broadway shows, it would always be that moment of that, and then remembering, okay, this is your talent. It's bubbling up inside you. You want to just ground yourself. And I would have a routine, which, people, I can share with that, but I would do things like doing squats. So I would just go down and do squats kind of also in a yoga position. Sometimes I would do downward dog. Sometimes I would just do things like this. So the second you start to kind of box with nobody, but just a box with the air around you, you come into such a powerful place of being centered. So, if I do that, I feel immediately my solar plexus chakra get activated. Right.
Mm,
So, what are the things that you can do with sound, with movement, that you become more and more embodied? Because once again, the truth is, it is your talent and is your essence that's going, "Hi, you know, here I am." And to have that be okay, and as my teacher would say, take the question mark off your back. Just remove it. That was a huge concept to me, because whether you're aware of it or whether it's lurking in your subconscious, there is that question mark.
absolutely. I love that advice. I'm so glad that you shared it with us because I think it's so relatable. And I never really thought about it like that, about how unique we are with our voice. And I mean, I guess I had thought about it with other attributes, but never like the way you put it. So I just think that that's um, really powerful. So I wanted to ask you, how did you transition from your voice as an instrument to the bowls, going into the sound healing th- it was a shift, from one mode to another. And I mentioned a little bit in the intro about that, but how did you navigate that? What happened?
Yeah, thank you. So I still sing with the bowls, and there's times where I do use my voice and times where I don't use my voice. And we've actually arranged a couple of albums where I'm actually singing music, like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, or a classical aria like the Song to the Moon from Dvorak's Rusalka. So there's all different ways, again, as we've been talking about, when you work with melodies, that activates a certain part in you. When you just work with sound, so just let's say the vibration of the bowls, or let's say asking people to Om Ma, ooh, when you ask people to sound or make their own personal sounds with the bowls, that's something too that's very, very important. So it's a combination of everything. It's using vibration. I'll tell you a little bit about the crystal singing bowls. So I discovered them 18 years ago. I was living in Germany at the time. My young son was 7, and I was traveling with my mom in the United States, and we saw that somebody was giving a demonstration, and I was like, "Oh, let's go listen, mom," and because I had for years where I lived in Germany, there was a shop in Dusseldorf, which is in the center of Germany, that was a singing bowl shop, and they had hundreds of these Himalayan singing bowls, these metal singing bowls, and I bought a number of them. I loved them. And as part of my routine as a singer, so for example, I traveled to Japan and did a concert series in the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven. I would, before the performances, I'd travel with my two of the bowls. I'd put them on my belly and I would just play the bowl and I would just I would just come into what I mentioned, this channel, this central channel that activates all of our chakras, but is uniquely us. It was uniquely Jeralyn, right? And I would do my warm ups using those singing bowls. But 18 years ago, when I heard them, it was like they were one of the most beautiful instruments that I'd ever heard. And as a singer, I'd heard all the instruments in the Western orchestra and some Eastern style of instruments also. But I'd never heard anything that sounded like that, Andrea. And it was as if in the moment I heard the bowls, something, something, I can't explain it, awakened in my memory something about these sounds. Like they seemed uh, very natural and something that I knew. And so I bought a set of seven, one that corresponded to each of the seven energy centers in the body, each of the chakras. And I brought them back to Germany and started to play them for myself. My young son loved them. He'd always say, "Mommy, bring me to bed with my sound blanket." Like he loved, and most kids do. They see the bowls and they hear the bowls and they're like, "Oh, wow." So he loved it. And we integrated it like in our prayers. And then again, I was a singer. I was not a meditation expert or anything, but we'd do like meditations where we'd imagine the colors of the chakra and the chakras, and just it was a ritual that we had together. So he knew the bowls very well, and he liked sometimes to play them. He was very careful, and so they've been in my life for a long time. To explain, they are basically came out on the market in the year 2000. So I was, at the beginning of them. They're really very new. They came out of the boom in the computer industry in Silicon Valley because they were needing crucibles that were. Some of you may know them as the thick white frosted bowls. Were a variation of that, but they needed quartz crucibles because quartz could be fired at high temperatures to work with the computer chips. So, and then it was discovered many of the quartz crucibles broke in the high heat, and some of them didn't, that they could be used as an instrument. So that's how the bowl started. And in the year 2000, they started to make alchemy bowls. That means that the quartz was fired at high temperatures with the infusion of earth substances like frankincense or charcoal, precious metals like silver or gold, precious gemstones such as ruby or emerald, and earth substances, minerals like vanadium. And those substances or alchemies, as they are called, get amplified. So if we understand quartz is the great amplifier, transmitter, and receiver, those elements are infused in the bowls. And as you're playing them, they're also being amplified. So, for me at the time, it was just like, these are incredibly beautiful. I started to play them not only with my son, but with my singing students. And I had one experience where uh, a student had a blockage in her voice, and we were working to open her voice and get her with more ease into her higher range. So I had her take one of the bowls. So, for example, I had her do something like this. To just see if she could match her voice with the sound of the bowl. And her voice opened. And I was as astounded as she was because I didn't know them as therapeutic instruments. I just thought they were incredible, beautiful instruments that I wanted to play with. And as a result of this, her voice opened. And then at the end of the session, she shared with me a trauma from her childhood that she had remembered that was pretty tough. And I allowed her. We shared it. I'm not a therapist, but we talked it through. We did some more toning, and that young woman changed. And at the time, there was a big national competition and a singing competition. She ended up taking the overall second prize. And I never forgot that. But again, I was active in my singing career. I was running a kids foundation that I created, and I was not doing anything related to sound healing. My own son had a really interesting experience. He was also in that national singing contest, and he made it to the semifinals. And a week before his audition, he was like, "Mom, Mom, something's happening. Mom." And his voice started to drop. And
Oh.
it was so sweet. At that time, Andrea, I had never taken a boy, a young person through their voice change. And I talked with colleagues and they were like, they guided me a bit and we used the bowls. So Dylan, same thing as the young girl did. I'd have him just go, ah, 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 and play around with his voice, really release his jaw, and his voice stayed open. And for those in music, we had to lower the keys and make his musical key a little bit lower. But he stood up and he said, "Hi, my name is Dylan, and since 1 week, I'm no longer soprano." So he made a joke. He sailed into his program as if nothing was happening. And so those two experiences with young people and the bowls were embedded in me. But again, at that time, I wasn't doing anything what we would call sound healing. I think really at that time, music therapists were doing that. With my kids foundation, we were raising money for with production. So I directed and we co-wrote productions for like 20 children, and then they performed them, and we raised $35,000 a year that went to music therapy. So we were working hand in hand with music therapists, but I wasn't doing it. We were helping to support them. So like the trained music therapist had drums and had different instruments, a mandolin, guitar, and we watched that. But that's not what I was doing at the time. Fast forward 9 years ago, my son passed away, and it was a shock. It was yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, and those of you who are listening, like as a parent, it's just not the normal order of things. And you expect, that when a parent dies, you feel that you've lost so much of your past. Or if a partner dies, you feel you've lost your present. But when a child dies, the whole future is gone. And Dylan made it very clear to me on the night that he died. He started to communicate with me through a huge shooting star where I could hear a whoosh, and I could hear his voice, "Mom, Mom, it's like we always talked about. I'm home. I'm with God." And I knew in that instant that what he was referring to was the childhood memories where we played the bowls together, where we understood without words that we were made of vibration, that we were made of energy. Later, I learned this, and I learned the science and the spirituality behind sound and music as medicine. And we've been exploring that. But at that time, 9 years ago, it was just like, wait, what? Wait, 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 wait. But I heard him. And then the communication became more and more regular. And it's been a really interesting journey of how do we navigate loss? How do we navigate grief? How do we, what I mentioned earlier, like, how do we tune ourselves if we get out of tune? I've been working with cancer patients for 9 years now, and how have I helped them? How has sound been a medicine for them? Same with hospice patients. How have I held space when someone's crossing? I mean, these are things in our culture that we kind of just we just kind of don't really want to go there, right? Um, and so that change in path happened with Dylan's passing, and truly, I can say to you, with him guiding me, Mom, there's something beyond what you and I have ever conceived of. There's, even this close connection with God, there's something beyond that, and try to put that into words. And, whether it's working with a family whose parent is dying of cancer or whose child is dying of cancer, or whatever it is, or a veteran that's just stuck in the PTSD with anger. Or I just had a Parkinson's patient who we were working with the bowls. We were in a group, we were working with bowls, and we were working with toning. So I was having the group sing with me, tone with me with the bowls, and this man who's a professor just goes, Jeralyn, what is happening? He said, I have Parkinson's. I get dizzy, I'm wobbly. And he said, I don't have any of that. He said, look at me. And he walked, and it was like, what has happened? What is it? And, again, we try to identify, is it the notes? Is it the fact that we were in a group and everybody's voices were harmonizing? So we were like a human orchestra. What was the magic? And this is the interesting part, I think, about music as medicine is that there's no one size fits all. I can't give you this musical song as a pill and say everyone who takes Fly Me to the Moon is going to have this as a result. It doesn't work that way because we are so, what you mentioned earlier, like you hear a particular song and that takes you back to your teenage years and you go, oh, wow, I hear that same song and I don't have that experience at all. So it's important to understand that music is a very personal thing. And for me, this is also what's empowering because we
Mm.
learn as individual instruments, this makes me feel good. This soothes my heart. This particular sound does this for me. This particular, song makes me want to get up and dance. And it's going to be different for everybody. And again, for me, this is what's empowering. And when I'm teaching the students, it's like, I'm not going to put them in a cookie cutter program. It's just that's not what it's about. You come with your gifts and your talents where you've removed the question mark off your back and you accept and know that you are lovable, that you deserve, that you're good enough. And then you offer your gifts from that place of really groundedness. Now, as you asked me earlier, which was such a brilliant question, really, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. Were you nervous as an 11-year-old? It comes back to I've watched again and again people who say I can't sing begin to tone with bowls. I've watched people come into the trainings who just go, I don't know that I can really do that. And then suddenly they're leading a meditation. And suddenly they recognize I have my own personal alchemy. I have my unique gifts. And sound is holding space for me to express them. Because in essence, what you shared, this is the original instrument. It's not the bowls, it's not the violin, it's not the piano. Who's the being? Who's the artist? Who's the teacher? Who's the practitioner that's playing the instrument? That one has to know how to align and tune themselves. I mean, that's also what Reiki, the power of Reiki to bring balance back into the body. And suddenly you go, oh, that's what we
Mm.
want to help whether it's clients, patients, students, I want to help everybody to find that place where it's like, that's the empowered part of me. And then to build that, to ground that, to express that freely is, then what we're doing is we're tuning the world, one human being, one instrument at a time.
There's so many layers to this. It's mind-blowing, really, I think. But something that struck me was you said, the song can't be like a pill. It's not like a mass cookie cutter kind of thing, And on the one hand, I went, oh, bummer. Because, I mean, don't we all kind of want that? It's like, oh, you have this issue. Here you go. Play this note or sing this,
Right.
whatever. So the human part of me was like, bummer. And then, but this other part of me was like, yes, because that means connecting with people. That means community. That means shared experience and learning from each other and with each other. Because if it was the other way, we could just sit at our house and by ourselves and disconnected alone and just listen to the song. But where's the joy in that? You know, I think there's something to be said for the collective now moment.
And it calls us to be present. It
Mhm.
calls us to take responsibility for, hey, that doesn't feel good to me. Hey, that does feel good to me. Like to really be a part of the equation. And I think for many people, especially women, and I know as a child too, my parents sometimes would say, children are to be seen and not heard. And I think especially for women, we've been taught be nice, fit in, and we're not necessarily taught growing up to speak up. And I think this ability to use sound and to become very present and then to begin to speak our truth with ease and with grace. And sometimes, at the beginning, it might be awkward and it might be angry and it might be all kinds of things because there's a fountain that may really emerge. But it, I think working with sound has called me to be present in my own body, in my own being, in my own life in a way that I'm not sure I was ever present at that level of depth. Does that make sense, Andrea?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, it does. You know, we make sound in this moment, you know? We can only make sound in the now moment. The sound we made an hour ago or a minute ago, it isn't happening. I mean, we're not experiencing it right now. So there is that now factor that you're bringing up that I think is a really important point in all of that.
And what I've learned, I think, working with all different kinds of people is that the journey through just our lives, but also the journey through loss or grief or an illness or whatever it is, a job change, a divorce, whatever it is, or a child in school that's feeling left out or lonely and where do they fit in? Whatever that journey is, yes, people can guide and support us, but sound can help us learn this is what feels good to me. Okay, how do I work with that to guide myself? And especially in the grief journey, nobody could say it goes this way. Like, there are days where you're just devastated and taken out, and days where there's hope and there's light. And it's the same with everything in life. But, there's, like you said earlier, there's not one magic pill where you go, okay, I'll just take that and it's all going to be cool. Like, it's all good. We have to have the strength to be able to breathe and feel whatever comes up for us. And, we're just taught to just put things in the pockets and we don't necessarily have permission to breathe and feel everything that's happening for us, which is why then traumas come up later in life, like the young girl that was my singing student, and suddenly the sound was going, and in this case, it wasn't a song she was singing, it was just vocal sounds. I think this is a very, very, very interesting thing that we can't put it in one easy box. I've talked a lot with Dr. Daniel Levitin, is a famous neuroscientist. He wrote "This Is Your Brain on Music," and he's like saying, like, if somebody, first of all, he says that children should be exposed to as many different kinds of music as possible, not just what you particularly listen to, but whether it's traditional Indian music or reggae or country music or whatever it is. But it's good if children are exposed to many different styles of music, because then as they get older they can choose, oh, I really like that, right? And for example, like when I started singing classical music, I didn't grow up with that, and I was exposed to the Italian songs, etc. But when I really was in the profession, it's a very specialized audience that goes to opera and classical concerts. It's a whole different kind of audience that goes to a pop concert or a new age music concert or a country music concert. So it's what feels good to you. And then we want to cultivate that and really find, well, how is that guiding me through the passages that I need to go through in my life? Because once again, we look to others to maybe guide us, which is great. But the bottom line is, I heal when I feel. And this is, and especially when you're going through hard times in your lives, it's just like, I don't want to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
But so let's get a pill or let's get a thing that kind of, you know, eases it for a little bit. But I learned in my journey that I heal when I am able to feel. And music gave me the safe container, the sounds of the bowls to really just feel. And then when the tears came, they came. Or listening to a song that my son and I loved or whatever, just listening to that again and again, and then just eliciting the tears and letting that release. And then knowing, okay, how do I let it go also? How do I not just hold on to that and then keep going back to that memory? No, how does sound as a medicine help us to really release and let go? And then perhaps you move your body to that sound, or it makes you then want to just get up and move to that. It's important that we learn to let go, to release and to let go, to breathe and to feel.
I'm taking a minute here to invite you to beyondthereikigateway.com. We have a brand new podcast optimized website that will really serve you so much better. All the episodes are there in both audio and video. Feeds to your favorite podcast apps are available, and the ability to leave reviews is now super easy. You can even leave us a voicemail and more. We've made improvements across the board for all of our listeners to benefit. And we've also up-leveled our BTRG Insider program. Benefits now include 24-hour early access to all our regular episodes, more exclusive behind the scenes content only insiders get to access, with the ability to send in their questions for special Ask Me Anything episodes. You'll secure ad free listening, limited only to my updates and our guest offers. And perhaps the thing I like best is you'll be able to access all the episodes and the insider content on your preferred podcast feed. That's right, everything in one convenient place, just for you, making it very easy. All the new features are waiting for you, and more details about our BTRG Insider program. They're just a click away over at beyondthereikigateway.com. Above all, thank you for listening, and a special shout out to our BTRG insiders from the past and those coming on board. Your support absolutely helps us to produce our show. I'm wondering if I can ask you a pretty personal question. During that time when you were grieving, you know, you weren't yet the pioneer of sound healing and all of this. And I don't think from what you've shared so far that you had someone teaching you that. You were working it through on your own, correct? Would you how did that look? Did you have the bowls laid out and you would just go start to play them? H- Did you have internal guidance as to what to play and how to play? What was that like?
You ask such beautiful questions, Andrea. It's very deep. Because yes, there was no teacher that was teaching me except for my son. And I'm sitting in the kitchen one day and he says, because he started to really communicate with me when I was deep in the grief and just longing or angry or just out of tune, I couldn't hear him or find him. And when I would come into moments where I was more, I'll just call it more sober, more present, um, and not that I was drinking, I wasn't drinking, but just this feeling of just, okay, I can handle the grief. I can handle it. And feeling it, he would talk to me. So one day I'm in the kitchen and he goes, "Mom, call the bowl dudes. We're going to do sound healing." And I'm like, "Wait, what? Did I really just hear that?" And it's like, it was repetitive 3 days in a row. Call the bowl dudes. And he was big. He was 6'3" and 230 pounds. He was an athlete. And it was just like when he talked, it was big. And so after the third day, I actually called the company and spoke with one of the owners and just said, my son passed away and he's telling me to get deeper into the bowls. And so at that moment, I chose 11 bowls. I had seven already. And, I didn't know anything. And the company doesn't, it's not about educating, it's more about feeling and choosing that way. But me being a professor and a classical musician, I wanted to educate, and which is what I do now. But I chose the bowls not by notes. I chose them by the alchemies. So I thought, okay, celestite, that'll connect me to the celestial realms. Amethyst, that's about like spirituality. Charcoal, that'll help me to detoxify the grief. Rose quartz, that'll help my heart. So selenite, I knew was about grounded white light and a bridge. So I chose bowls strictly on alchemies. So they didn't make a harmonic set. So when those came, I started with the selenite bowl. That's the one I chose. And, I can say to you now that now I understand it was the note of G sharp. So G sharp is coordinating with the back of the throat, which is what we call the zeal point chakra, which some people say is the mail slot to God. But in any case, it's a higher note, And as I started to play that bowl, I saw a misty white substance in the room. And it's just, I mean, and again, after these things, I would say to my mother, Mom, here's this classical musician and I'm a professor. I'm talking to my son on the other side. And now I'm playing crystal singing bowls. I must have lost it, And as time went on, she was like, No, dear, you're helping so many people. But in the beginning, there was the misty white substance. I felt Dylan very strongly in the room. I felt him showing me what to do. And Andrea, there were moments in that first session, it went about 50 minutes, where the bowl sounded like nails on a chalkboard. And me as a musician, I'm like, what are you doing wrong, Jeralyn? And, later I recognized I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was doing everything right. It's just that that bowl being crystal was in training with my grief. And it was sounding like nails on a chalkboard because that's what I felt inside, but I didn't know that. And of course, I went to, what are you doing wrong? So it was like this whole process of, whoa, you need to be so tender with yourself. And just all these things like learning, he guided it. I'm going to just say that. And I'll never forget after that first session with that selenite bowl, when I got up to go wash my face in the bathroom, I saw there was light in my eyes. And it was like, wait, this is bizarre because there had been such a heaviness and just a sadness. And I looked and my eyes were filled with light. Like there was joy, there was hope in my eyes. And it was like, okay, son, I get it. Something's happening here. It didn't happen overnight, but it was really using my skills as a musician. So later understanding, okay, that's the G sharp. No, oh, okay. Oh, and then we talk about, the tuning. What does the tuning mean? So as a musician, all for the most part, everything is played in 440 hertz tuning, right? But the bowls come in 432, which is a little bit lower tuning. Okay, as a singer, I actually sang a Baroque opera that was tuned to 432 hertz. So I knew what that was about. And then there's 528 hertz, which is a little bit higher tuned. So there's all these different aspects that my complete musical background and performer's background just, whoa, the lights would just go on like, oh, and that's in a minor key. And that, oh. So I think, I don't know, I think how do you discover these things? It was being willing to go through the discomfort, being open enough to recognize, okay, my son is here present in the room. And as weird as that may be, he's here. Right. And how do you do that? Right. And so it was learning, because simultaneously I was in a talk therapy, which was helping to just talk about things, but it didn't get inside where I needed it to get, like, so sometimes in our bodies, like if you experience rolfing or deep tissue work, sometimes somebody needs to help guide you in there and help release tensions you're holding. And suddenly the feelings come up. Well, it was the same thing with the music. Suddenly the music was going, let me hold you. And then you drop in. And then suddenly you're going, oh, right. So does that make sense?
Mhm. Yes.
So it was like that. It was just exploring. And then I had one day where I was laying in bed, maybe about 6 months in, where I just thought, I don't think I'm going to get up. And I fought with myself and I just said, Geraldine, if you don't do something to help others, you will never get out of your bed. And that's the end of your life. And I made myself get up and I called the Cancer Support Community, which is a nonprofit that offers cancer patients and their families alternative ways of support, whether it's yoga, um, nutritional things. And I called them and I just said, I'd like to offer sound baths. And I'm like, I never led a meditation. I never had led a sound bath, but it was just like I knew I had to do that. And I would say to you now that my son was helping to guide that, I think, because that changed everything for me. I started holding those sound baths and experimenting with different tunings, different combination of notes. By this time, I had more and more bowls. So, like here in the studio, there's over 600 bowls at any given time, so that I can put together sets for people very specified to them. Right. So I started experimenting with the cancer patients, and then I had different themes of meditation, such as letting go and releasing, detoxifying and cleansing, bringing in your own light, etc. So I'm loving yourself. I had different themes that I wrote scripts for and put bowls together according to what I knew as a musician and what I was beginning to understand more and more about the bowls. And all our lives changed. And I remember one moment after one of the sessions where I just looked in amazement around the room and just went, there's nothing but love in here. What, how did we do that? And as a singer, I always had a quote that I loved by Sidney Lanier that says, music is love in search of a word. But it was so apparent to all of us sitting in that room. We all kind of looked around in wonder and just went, there's so much love present in this room after the sound bath that it was healing. It was healing for all of us. And I write in my book, Sacred Vibrations, I write about a number of the stories that happen with cancer patients, just miracles. So I think it was just kind of, I had a motto that as a young singer, when you asked me again about the nerves, it was like, jump and the net will appear. That was something I learned also as a young singer in New York, like, just, Jeralyn, take the risk, jump and the net will appear. So it was guidance, I think, of taking what I knew, and exploring with the bowls and having my son at my side.
Your willingness to just experiment is inspirational. So often, I think we say, well, I don't know how to do that, or, you know, it would take me a long time to learn about that. So I'm just not even going to do it, that kind of thing. But your willingness to be open and just explore and experiment and not have a destination, that's how fortunate are we that you made those decisions.
I mean, once it started to open, I worked with Dr. Sue Morter, who my son guided to, and this is what happened on a travel with her to Peru. So there, she's holding Dylan's picture at the top of Machu Picchu, and
Oh
this
my
beam of light
goodness.
comes in. So I studied with her, and I mean, it that was my first experience with her in Peru. And I had told her that my son had passed away, and she was just so loving and took his picture with her the whole trip. And I couldn't go to the top of Machu Picchu. I was just too weak still from the grief. But she did a ritual, and that beam of light came in. So these miracles were happening. And then I started to work with Jonathan and Andy Goldman, who he's a pioneer in the field of sound and sound medicine. And both of them co-teach with me now on a particular program that I do. But it's like I learned so much from him and Andy Goldman, and then so much from Dr. Sue. And it was like, okay, so these are more perimeters around which I land my own musical knowledge and experience, and then just playing the bowls themselves, and then feeling like, it wasn't this particular note that would do it, but people would have incredible reactions to the bowls, like just time and time again, just like the man with the Parkinson's, but cancer patients who were like, you know, what happened? Again, same kind of feeling, like, because the sound takes us really beyond our thinking mind and beyond what we might know. And then it drops us into a deeper inner knowing, which again, that's how we can heal, by feeling things. So the bowls were showing me as much as I was working with them, they were also showing me. So this combination of bioenergetics from Dr. Sue, and then sound and the whole structure of sound from Jonathan and Andy Goldman, that was critical to where my work has taken me.
I am very motivated to ask you about the science behind this because, with a science background, that of course intrigues me. But let's go to that man with Parkinson's, um, or any of the other examples you might want to share. What's happening? Can you speak to the science of it? What's the understanding? Is there research? Can you update us about that?
Sure. So, this is a huge topic.
I know, I know.
It's huge. So I can say to you technically, and again, it's not never going to be a one size fits all, but the sound helps to calm the fight or flight reaction. So for many people that have anxiety, they go to a sound bath and they're just like, they're so chilled and they go home with that feeling and they can repeat that feeling. Um, so the production of cortisol is lessened. So body chemistry, the leukocytes, which help strengthen the immunity, they get more prolific. The dopamine levels rise. So there's a lot that happens in the body chemistry. And I've had a lot of times where people have intense physical pain and the physical pain stopped. So just like with the Parkinson's, but actually like physical pain, like what happened to my back pain or where did my knee pain go? And again, I think the bottom line is the mind stills, you're out of fight or flight, and the body has its moments to regenerate, rejuvenate, renew, and the body chemistry shifts because you're not in fight or flight. That we start to work with the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system starts to really kick in, and you're not in panic, and I think that's a big part of it. Just last year, so in 2023, we created, I'm helping to build a lab at Minerva Institute, which has been voted the last 3 years one of the most innovative university in the world. They're located in San Francisco and they have campuses all around the world, but they have different kind of labs. One is a sustainability lab that's based in Costa Rica. So the students, which are from over 110 countries, study in different countries in the world. So they're getting this huge um, international education. But we started a music, science, and the brain health and wellness lab at Minerva and started to work with researching binaural beats. So again, there's so much uh, that's being explored as to how music helps calm. Um, at the event in Washington D.C., Renee Fleming, if you don't know, is an incredible opera singer, showed a video of a child in the hospital going to have an operation, and how her music therapist was there and was having her sing. So they were singing together just a little song that the child loved, and just watching that child just go from incredible fight or flight and panic about the operation to just being in joy again. So more dopamine in the body, leukocytes more pronounced. We work together with John Stewart Reed, who's an acoustic engineer, acoustic scientist in England. He has invented a machine called the cymoscope. You can actually see sound made visible. So we're working with him. We've also created an app. So this is our app that's just in soft release. Source Be Inspired. And the idea is, just as you asked, like to make this platform where science, the power of music, and spirituality, where does that all, and body work, yoga, the deep science of the Vedic tradition, where does that all intersect? And why is that important for all of us now? Because I feel like the intersection of someone brilliant like you that has a science background, and yet you're experiencing spiritual things. Me as a classical musician, where I had been then very structured, suddenly, like what I said, communicating with my son, and it's happening through sound, and it's like, wait, what's happening in my life? But to really own that all of this is connected, and there's so much that science can't explain, but we know that it works. We know
Yeah.
that it works, and yeah.
Yeah, that's just it, isn't it? I mean, we know things work far ahead of science sometimes. And, you know, if it works, it works. Um, I need to ask you this. What about people who have had hearing loss? How does that play into this?
Interesting. So I was playing an event for Maria Shriver, and I was doing the invocation. So it was like a 7 minute, not even, introduction. I was playing a particular kind of music. I was playing a pentatonic scale. A woman stood up again, same thing. Like people were blown away. Same thing like the Parkinson's patient. What just happened? She said, I have had tinnitus for 10 years. It's gone. It's gone.
Okay, so here's the next question then. Is it gone forever? Did you ever hear what do people say?
Yeah,
The
and
yeah,
good question. So I've also worked with for a period of time. I was before COVID. I was working at a Condé Nast award-winning wellness retreat center in Thailand, and I actually had four people that had hearing issues. Um, those with tinnitus, it did go away. Now, if we were really doing scientific experiments, there would be follow up. So, for example, with the Parkinson's patient, we checked in and he told me that it had come back. So I asked him, what is he doing? Nothing. So I sent him some more music, but he was asking me, Jeralyn, is it the notes you played? Is it the alchemies of the bowls you used? What's infused in the quartz? Is it the tuning you played? And he was trying to identify what was it. But if I really feel into that situation, I think it was the combination of everybody in the group. So there were students, there was I just feel it was the community that was holding him. But I did send him particular tunings. I did send him a particular combination of notes. So we're working with that, to
yeah,
try to identify, because it's the same thing, Andrea, in technique. When I'm teaching a young singer, my teacher used to say to me, your technique's not made here. So if I go da 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 dum, the thing is, if I listen to it, so if I go da 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 da, I'm listening, I'm making sure that it's good and you like it. But if I land in my body and I go da 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 da, has a different quality to it. I am learning and establishing my technique through the feel of how it feels when it's right and when it's free. So I think that's an aspect, so I learned as a singer that technique is built on repeating the bodily felt sensations. It's not built on, okay, so you do this with your jaw, you make sure your eyes are doing, you know what I mean? It's not built on, it's the repetition of how it feels when I'm free. And so I'm working with him a little bit about that. How did that feel in your body when suddenly the Parkinson's symptoms were gone? Ah, okay. So let's see if we can go for the feeling of it, and then let's have you hum with that. Mm. Because then he's empowering his own vibrational frequency to help him solidify the sense of freedom he felt in his body. Does that make sense?
it does. And what I especially love about that is he's the instrument. And those sound waves are emanating from the core of his being, rippling through every cell of his body, and he's hearing it. I mean, multidimensional. Yes, I teach a kind of Reiki called Karuna Reiki, and we do toning and chanting of the different symbols, and it's the same kind of property. And I love that. I feel like I could ask you questions for another 3 hours, and I would love every minute of it, but unfortunately, I think we're about out of time. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to say that, but, oh, for people like me who wanna know more and keep going with this, how can they best reach out, learn more about all of the wonderful things that you're doing, your book, your app? Please tell us.
All right, thank you. So this is the book, Sacred Vibrations. And then on page 233, it has a download page. So there's a beautiful 20-minute film that I highly recommend. And then there's musical excerpts for you to download so you can hear different scales, you can hear different tunings, and maybe have a little sense, oh, I really like that. Okay, so that's the book. Then we
Very
created
nice.
this oracle deck for those of you who like angel cards and oracle decks, the Crystal Sound Healing Oracle. And what is exciting about that is that you have a QR code here on the card. And so you
Oh,
can hear the sound of the bowl that you chose. So all this is on our website, Crystal Cadence. Same with, we have some new music that is beautiful. This is called Pentatonic Visions. This is an album of the whole album is based on the pentatonic scale, which is a very special musical structure. And then, as I showed you earlier, the app Source Be Inspired, which is a wonderful platform where, like, for example, the scientist I mentioned, John Stewart Reed, is on it. Jonathan Goldman and Andy Goldman are on it. Dr. Sue Morter's on it. So I just, and my son encouraged just this passionate exploration of, mom, make a platform that people just can reach in their purse or reach in their back pocket, and there it is on their phone, right? And they have access to that. So that was the idea of, the book is in audio form also. You can find it on all the audio platforms and on Spotify. And then I teach, and we're offering for the first time in 2025, we're offering an actual retreat for the general public, because so many people have asked over the years, and until now I've really just trained practitioners, but now we're going to do a retreat in August of 2025 in person of, let's explore this. Let's explore using your own voice. You don't have to be a singer. Let's explore what the sound can do for you, and let's be together in community in this space of music as medicine. So that's happening. All that information, the trainings, if anyone wants to study, or if people are interested in purchasing a bowl or a set of bowls, I personally curate those, which I love doing. Yeah, that's all on the website, Crystal Cadence. And I would just love to just play you just a moment so you can hear. So what I just played you now, that's only two notes. It's two notes, but it's in different octaves. So this is for me also, like the science behind the sound. What happens when I play? These are three C notes. Right, so you can feel one is down below your body, one is at the root chakra, and this one is above the crown. So what am I doing when I'm giving people that space? What happens when I play this kind of structure, for example, for cancer patients? For example, this is exactly the structure that I played for the Parkinson's patient. When you have sound that is below your feet that grounds you, then something that's here at your root and something that's above your crown. Now what happens when I add this? Sorry. For me, those sounds are just like, I'll be quiet. I'll take these five sounds. So I'm using here the science of sound, the science of the structure of music theory that dates back. We can say it dates back to the time of Pythagoras, but then, for example, when I was living in Germany, they discovered bird bone flutes that they dated to be 40 to 60,000 years ago that were tuned to the pentatonic scale. So in other words, there is such an ancient study of sound and the science and structure behind it. But then we've got these modern instruments, that this is with morganite, this one has amethyst, this one has phenakite. Well, what does that mean? And people today love, gemstones and crystals and those kinds of things. So to actually have an instrument that is amplifying the power of crystals is also super cool and interesting in today's world, because we all feel like, there's an incredible power in that. Then I add other notes. And I could go on and on, which is why I teach over 120 hours of training, because there's so much inherent in this new field of study. And as we've been talking about in this beautiful conversation, it's incredibly personal. And it's going to empower you because you're going to discover, oh, I loved that amethyst and I loved that note. That felt great to me. I didn't care for this one as much. Right. And then you're going to feel, okay, that's connected to the root chakra. Amethyst has to do with my spiritual awakening. Okay, what's happening for me? Right. And then once you land in that and you are tuned as this human instrument, you can go out in the world and do anything. It's just I feel very blessed, and it's a beautiful way to share with people. And if my son passed in the process of bringing me to this, then I've come to understand that there was a bigger soul contract between the two of us, and we're working this together, right? And so it's just opening to us not being a victim in our life situations, and really embracing what's present in our lives, and then taking the things you love and you're passionate about doing. And if you're not sure what those are, then you're going to explore and discover them. But the bottom line is, this is a human instrument, and this instrument deserves to be kept finely tuned, and it deserves to express itself freely.
I can't thank you enough for sharing everything that you shared, but the bowls at the end, oh my goodness, I was feeling them. Just beautiful.
And what I first
Absolutely.
played for you was two notes.
I know. It's hard for me to wrap my logical mind around it. I don't have a musical background, so I don't have that level of understanding. Um, but that's okay because I'm an overthinker. So I'm happy to I'm happy to not have to think about that, and I can just enjoy the the sound.
I've had so many medical doctors and scientists cry, and then they're like, they're kind of like, what did you do? Like, and we've had situations where I write in the book about myself, that happened to myself working with an IBM analyst. And afterwards, he was just like, what kind of voodoo did you do? What'd you do? And then other friends who are also working in this field shared of playing in Germany and having uh, an executive from Siemens come to them and go, I'm from Siemens. I'm an engineer. I don't cry. Why am I crying? What happened? Right. And that's
Mhm.
the power of music, is that especially for people with brilliant minds, the mind is calmly quiet. And then, because I think just how you described yourself, I mean, also you've got this brilliant mind, but you're a Reiki master and you've developed all these other things. So it's like, what happens when science and spirituality, when science and spirit, when music and spirit, when structure and spirit come together, and you have this solid container, but then you have the flow of love and spirit. And I've come to learn that it's not Hallmark love. I mean, this is the vibration of love. It's a part of everything that we're doing, and it's a part of what helps us to heal. But, talk to a scientific community about love, and they're going to go, well, all right. But this is it. It's the embracing of all of us, which is why the retreat is about embodying our wholeness. How do we do that? How do we bring all parts of ourselves to the party and
Yeah.
honor them? Because your brilliance is needed, 1,000%. But also is your spirit and your heart.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's w w where I went when you were talking is, well, we have this human physical body and this spirit. So it's, it all goes together, what you're saying, it's the divine and the human experience happening at one time, you know. Ah, so much wonderful things to unpack from all you've shared, and I just can't thank you enough.
Oh, thank
Thank
you
you.
for asking such really intimate and beautiful questions, and allowing us to hold this sacred space for your listeners of, wow, music is music as we know it, pop music, etc. But music is also, it's a medicine.
It is. It is. And if I ever doubted it, I certainly I'm a believer now, but I always really knew that. But ah, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and you can check the show notes or visit the website beyondthereikigateway.com to find out more about the podcast and connect with me. Please keep in mind that views and opinions expressed in the show don't necessarily reflect those of the podcast or anyone affiliated with its production or advertising. This program is presented for your entertainment only, and all information provided is to be utilized at the listener's own discretion. I, along with the BTRG team, hope you enjoy the show as much as we enjoy making it for you. Wishing you highest blessings until we meet again beyond the Reiki Gateway.